I stood at the back of the crowd, heart pounding against my ribs, as I watched my younger brother Jason accept his Navy SEAL trident. 10 years of secrets hung heavy between us. My family believed I was the dropout who abandoned our proud military legacy. Dad refused to speak my name since that phone call when I told him I was leaving the academy. Now, across the sea of dress whites, the commanding general suddenly locked eyes with me. His face changed. Recognition. The crowd had no idea what was coming next. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to keep a difficult secret. The next part might just change how you think about sacrifice. Growing up the military was not just a career in our family, it was our legacy, our identity. My father served 22 years in the Navy, reaching the rank of commander before retiring. He displayed his medals proudly in our living room, beneath portraits of my grandfather, who fought in Vietnam, and my great-grandfather, who served in World War II. From my earliest memories, Dad would tell us bedtime stories about honor duty and the proud history of American naval warfare. "Dallas," he would say, resting his weathered hand on my shoulder, "one day you will carry on this tradition. It is in your blood." My younger brother Jason was only 4 years younger, but he looked up to me with unwavering admiration. We spent summers building model ships, memorizing naval battles, and practicing swimming until our fingers pruned and our bodies ached. While other kids played video games, we studied maps and military strategy. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you," Dallas, Jason would say, his small face earnest in the glow of our flashlights during our backyard missions. I would ruffle his hair and promise, "We will serve together someday, little brother." That is a promise. The day I received my acceptance letter to the Naval Academy was perhaps the proudest moment of my father's life. He immediately called everyone in our extended family, voice cracking with emotion, as he announced, "My son is going to Annapolis." That evening, he pulled out his old service uniform and showed me how to properly shine the brass buttons. Mom prepared a special dinner with apple pie, my favorite, while Jason peppered me with questions about what classes I would take and whether I would get to fire real weapons. "This is just the beginning," Dad said, raising his glass in a toast. 4 generations of service. This is what we were meant for. The pressure was immense, but so was my desire to make them proud. I had grown up watching how veterans in our town treated my father with respect, how people listened when he spoke. I wanted to earn that same respect, to know I was part of something greater than myself. The day I left for the academy, my entire family came to see me off. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone gathered in our driveway at 5 in the morning. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering prayers in my ear. Jason, trying to look tough at 14, gave me a firm handshake before breaking character and throwing his arms around me. "Make us proud, son," Dad said, standing straight, as if addressing a fellow officer rather than his 18-year-old boy. "Remember who you are." My first months at the Naval Academy exceeded even my own expectations. The discipline came naturally to me after years of my father's military-style household. I excelled in physical training, setting records in swimming and endurance exercises. My tactical thinking impressed instructors, and I quickly rose to leadership positions within my class. I wrote home weekly describing my accomplishments and the respect I was earning from upperclassmen and officers alike. Dad would call every Sunday evening, pride evident in his voice, as he asked for more details about my training and classes. He began telling me about opportunities within different branches of service, subtly pushing me toward the path he had envisioned: naval aviation, followed by command positions. Jason would sometimes get on the phone, too, his voice changing as adolescence took hold, asking about the weapons I was learning to use and whether I had made any cool military friends. I could hear the eagerness in his voice, already planning his own journey to follow in my footsteps. By Christmas break, I returned home with perfect scores and commendations from 3 different instructors and the physical transformation that the rigorous academy training had given me. Neighbors stopped by specifically to congratulate my parents on raising such a fine young man. Dad introduced me at his veterans group, meeting his hand firmly on my shoulder as he told everyone I was on track to graduate with honors. Next Christmas, he announced to the gathered veterans, we will be celebrating his first assignment, maybe even flight school. Little did any of us know how dramatically things would change. It happened during my second semester after returning from winter break. I had just finished an advanced swimming qualification when Commander Harris asked me to stay behind. Once the other midshipmen had left, a man in civilian clothes entered the pool area. He introduced himself simply as Thompson, though his bearing and the way Commander Harris deferred to him made it clear he held significant rank. Midshipman Dallas Thompson said, his voice low and measured, "I have been watching your progress with great interest. Your test scores, physical abilities, and psychological evaluations have flagged you for a special opportunity." He explained nothing specific, only that certain candidates with exceptional profiles were occasionally selected for programs outside the traditional naval career paths, programs that required absolute discretion. "This is not a decision to make lightly," Thompson said, handing me a sealed envelope. "Inside is information about a meeting tomorrow evening. If you are interested, come alone. If not, burn this." And we never had this conversation. That night, I sat alone in my room, turning the envelope over in my hands. Opening it revealed coordinates, a time, and a simple directive, come alone or not at all. The location was an unmarked building at the edge of the academy grounds. I called the only person I thought might understand my dilemma. My Uncle James, my mother's brother, who had served in intelligence operations before retiring to civilian life. I had always sensed there was more to his military career than the vague descriptions he offered at family gatherings. "Uncle James, if someone from a special program approached me, how would I know if it is legitimate?" A long pause followed before he answered carefully. "Dallas, some opportunities come once in a lifetime. Some men serve in ways that never make the papers or earn public medals." Another pause. "Is there something specific you need to tell me I cannot?" I replied. "Then you have already begun to understand what such service might require," he said softly. "Whatever you decide, know that true service sometimes means sacrifice beyond what others can see or appreciate." After a sleepless night, weighing my family legacy against this unknown path, I decided to attend the meeting. What followed was a series of interviews, psychological evaluations, and physical tests, far more rigorous than anything in the standard academy curriculum. 2 weeks later, Thompson, now identified as Colonel Thompson, offered me a position in a classified unit that operated outside conventional military structure. Accepting meant leaving the academy officially listed as having dropped out with no explanation allowed even to family. I would disappear into training for 2 years before beginning real operations. "Your country needs certain individuals with specific capabilities," Colonel Thompson explained. "This is not the path of parades and public recognition. You will serve in shadows, and often the only people who will know of your contributions will be in this room." The decision tore me apart. The legacy of 4 generations weighed against this call to serve in a different hidden capacity. That night, I made the hardest phone call of my life. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside, "I am leaving the academy." Silence. Then, "What did you just say? I am dropping out. I have already filed the paperwork." "This is a joke," he said, his voice rising. "Tell me this is some kind of sick joke. It is not. I have made my decision." What followed was 30 minutes of anger, confusion, and finally cold disappointment. He demanded explanations I could not give, reasons I could not share. "You are throwing away everything," he said, his voice hollow. "Everything our family stands for, everything I thought you were. I am sorry," was all I could say. His final words before hanging up were, "Do not come home. I do not have a son who quits." As I placed the receiver down, I promised myself that someday, somehow, I would make him understand. But in that moment, I had to accept that I had just severed the most important relationship in my life for a duty I could not even name. The next decade passed in a blur of classified operations, specialized training, and deployments to locations that officially I never visited. While my family believed I was living in shame as a Navy dropout, I was rapidly advancing through the ranks of an elite intelligence unit, eventually earning the rank of colonel before age 30, an almost unheard-of achievement. My work took me from Afghanistan to North Korea, from Russian borders to Iranian facilities. I led teams gathering intelligence critical to national security, prevented 3 major terrorist attacks on American soil, and developed extraction techniques now used throughout special operations communities, none of which I could share with anyone outside my unit. Through carefully cultivated channels, I received occasional updates about my family. Mom had developed health problems in the years following my disgrace. Dad had grown more rigid, more bitter. And Jason, determined to restore our family's honor, had pursued the most challenging path he could find: Navy SEAL training. The news about my family came through encrypted messages from Thompson, now General Thompson, and my direct superior. "Your mother asked about you again at the military spouses' luncheon," one report noted clinically. "Your father left the room when your name was mentioned at the Veterans Hall. And later, your brother has been accepted into BUD, divided by S training." He cites family redemption as motivation in his psychological evaluation. Each update was like a knife, but I buried the pain beneath layers of duty and purpose. My work was saving lives, protecting my country from threats most citizens would never know existed. That had to be enough. From what I gathered, Dad had created a narrative about me in the community I had cracked under pressure, proven too weak for real service. At family gatherings, I became the cautionary tale, the black sheep, the disappointment. Mom would defend me weakly, suggesting I might have had my reasons, but Dad would shut down any such talk. Jason, meanwhile, threw himself into becoming everything I supposedly was not. Where I had failed, he would succeed brilliantly. He drove himself mercilessly through training, graduated at the top of his class, and volunteered for the most dangerous assignments. In his mind, he was not just becoming a SEAL, he was restoring the family honor I had tarnished. I learned of Jason's upcoming SEAL Trident ceremony through an intelligence briefing of all things. His unit had performed exceptionally during a classified operation that overlapped with one of mine, and his name appeared in a report that crossed my desk. Seeing his accomplishments outlined in classified documents filled me with a bittersweet pride. My little brother had become extraordinary, partly because he was trying to erase my perceived failure. The decision to attend his ceremony was not made lightly. General Thompson advised against it, warning that my cover story would not withstand direct confrontation with family who knew me. But after 10 years of sacrifice, of missed holidays, and birthdays, of bearing the weight of my family's disappointment, I needed to see them, even if from a distance. "I will not approach them," I promised. "I just need to see my brother receive his trident." Thompson reluctantly authorized 48 hours of leave. Observe only Dallas. Do not engage. I arrived in San Diego the night before the ceremony, checking into a hotel under an alias. That evening, I walked past my parents' hotel, catching a glimpse of them entering the restaurant. Dad's hair had turned completely gray. Mom looked thinner, frailer than in my memories. They walked side by side, but not touching the distance between them visible even to a stranger. The morning of the ceremony, I dressed in civilian clothes, nothing that would draw attention. Just another spectator coming to honor the new SEALs. I arrived early, selecting a position at the back of the outdoor venue where I could see without being seen. One by one, family members and guests arrived, many familiar faces, now aged by the decade I had been gone. My Aunt Claire, who used to send me cookies every month at the academy, now walked with a cane. Cousins I had played with as children now arrived with spouses and children of their own. And then my parents' dad ramrod straight in his dress blues. He still fit into perfectly, mom clutching his arm, as they took seats in the front row reserved for families. The ceremony began with the traditional speeches about excellent sacrifice and the unbreakable brotherhood of special operators. I barely heard the words, my attention fixed on Jason as he sat with his classmates, his face serious but proud. The boy I had taught to swim and tie knots was now a warrior whose classified exploits I had read about in security briefings. Halfway through the ceremony, as I shifted position to keep out of direct sight lines, my mother turned her head, scanning the crowd as if sensing a presence. Our eyes met briefly across the rows of white folding chairs. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes widening in shock. I gave the slightest shake of my head, pleading silently for her discretion. After a moment of frozen surprise, she turned back to face the stage, but her posture had changed, alert, almost vibrating with tension. Moments later, she whispered something to my father, who frowned and began scanning the crowd himself. When his eyes found me, the color drained from his face. Anger, confusion, and something else, fear, perhaps, flashed across his features. He half rose from his seat before Mom pulled him back down, whispering urgently in his ear. The commanding general, a decorated SEAL himself, was midway through his address to the graduates when something caught his attention. Perhaps it was the disturbance in the front row, or perhaps it was simply chance that made him look toward the back of the assembly. Either way, his eyes locked onto mine, and decades of military training could not mask his shock. He faltered mid-sentence, squinting slightly to confirm what he was seeing. The crowd grew confused at the sudden pause. Then, with microphone in hand, he spoke the words that would shatter my decade of shadows. "Colonel, you are here." The crowd turned as one, a sea of heads swiveling to follow the general's gaze. A collective murmur rippled through the assembly. On stage, Jason's head snapped up, scanning frantically until he found me. And my father, my proud, unbending father, looked as though the earth had opened beneath him. His jaw literally dropped, his hand gripping the chair in front of him for support. The general, realizing his mistake too late, attempted to continue his speech, but the damage was done. The perfect secrecy of 10 years had been punctured with a single sentence. My cover was not just blown, it was obliterated in front of hundreds of witnesses, including my entire family. Time seemed suspended as the general tried to recover, clearing his throat and returning to his prepared remarks. But the damage was done. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. "Colonel, who is he talking about? Is that Dallas Reynolds? I thought he dropped out." When the ceremony concluded 20 excruciating minutes later, the general himself approached me before my family could reach me. He grasped my hand firmly, leaning in close. "My deepest apologies, Colonel. That was unforgivably careless of me." "No harm done, sir," I replied automatically, though we both knew that was far from true. "I worked with your team in Kandahar in 2013, he explained quickly. "Never expected to see you here. Your brother is an exceptional operator now. I understand where he gets it." Before I could respond, Jason pushed through the crowd, still in his dress, White's trident newly pinned to his chest. He stopped 2 feet away, staring as if seeing a ghost. "Dallas," his voice cracked like when he was 13. "What is going on? You are a colonel." Behind him, our parents approached more slowly. Dad's face unreadable, Mom already wiping tears. "Congratulations on your trident, SEAL," I said, extending my hand professionally, buying time while deciding how much I could now reveal. Jason ignored my hand and pulled me into a fierce embrace. 10 years, Dallas. 10 years of thinking you were. I do not even know what we thought. When we separated, my father stood directly before me. The crowd around us had created a respectful distance, but dozens of eyes watched the family drama unfold. "Dad," I said simply. "Colonel," he replied the single word, laden with a decade of questions. The general, sensing the tension, intervened smoothly. "Commander Reynolds, your son has served his country with exceptional distinction. His unit's work has saved countless American lives. I believe a private conversation might be in order. He gestured toward an empty administration building nearby. Inside a borrowed office, the questions came rapid fire. Where had I been? What unit? Why the deception? My father alternated between anger and confusion, while my mother simply held my hand as if afraid I might disappear again. I cannot share specifics, I began. Even now, most of my work remains classified. What I can tell you is that I was recruited from the Academy for Special Intelligence Operations. The dropout story was, cover the only way I could do the work they needed. 10 years without a word, my father said, his voice tight. We thought you had failed, given up. I know what you thought, I replied quietly, and I had to let you think it. The work I was doing, operational security, meant no contact, no explanations. You could have found a way to let us know, Dad insisted. Some hint, some sign. Jason, who understood operational security better than our parents, shook his head. No, Dad, he could not. Not if it was that level of classified. He turned to me. DEVGERU. Adjacent. I neither confirmed nor denied, but my silence was answer enough. Jason whistled softly, and Colonel Mom asked, You made full colonel already. Youngest in my division's history, I admitted. A subtle shift happened in my father's expression, pride warring with a decade of disappointment and anger. Why are you here now? Breaking cover after all this time, I wanted to see Jason receive his trident. I was not planning to approach you, just to see it happen. Jason's eyes filled with emotion. You came for me, even knowing what might happen. Of course I did. You are my brother. It was this simple statement that finally broke through my father's reserve. His military bearing crumbled, and suddenly he was just a father who had misjudged his son for 10 long years. I told people you were weak, he said, voice rough with emotion. I was so angry, so disappointed. I told everyone who would listen that you could not handle the pressure. You had every reason to believe that, I replied. That was the point of the cover story. But I should have known better. His eyes, so like my own, searched my face. I should have known my son. That evening, we gathered at my parents' house. Mom insisted on cooking my favorite meal pot roast with roasted potatoes, just like when I was growing up. The conversation remained awkward years of misconceptions, not easily swept away in a single afternoon. So all those years, we thought you were… What? Working at some office job? You were actually… My father trailed off, still struggling to reconcile the son he thought he had lost with the decorated officer sitting at his dinner table. I cannot talk about specific operations, I reminded him gently. But yes, I was serving, just not in a way anyone could know about. Those first few years I tried to find you, Mom admitted, placing a hand on mine. I hired a private investigator once. He found nothing, absolutely nothing. That would have been by design, I explained. My entire identity was compartmentalized. Dad shook his head. I do not understand how you did it. How did you bear us thinking so poorly of you all these years? The question struck deep, uncovering the pain I had buried beneath duty and purpose for a decade. It was the hardest part of the job, I admitted. Harder than any mission or firefight. Knowing what you thought of me. Hearing through channels about how Jason was working to redeem the family name, Jason looked down at his plate. I was so angry at you. I pushed myself through SEAL training, partly to show everyone that our family was not defined by what I thought was your failure. And you succeeded brilliantly, I told him sincerely. Your record speaks for itself. A moment of silence fell over the table before Dad spoke again, his voice different, now humbled. I need to speak with Dallas alone, he said, abruptly standing. Son, will you walk with me? Outside, the California evening was cool and clear. We walked in silence down the suburban street until Dad stopped beneath a streetlight. I failed you, he said simply, As a father, I failed you completely. You did not know. I began, but he raised his hand. That is exactly the point. I did not know, and I did not try to find out. I jumped to the worst conclusion and stuck to it for 10 years. I was so fixated on our family tradition, on what I thought honor looked like, that I could not imagine there might be a different kind of service, a different kind of sacrifice. He looked older in that moment than I had ever seen him, the weight of a decade's worth of misplaced anger and disappointment etched into the lines of his face. When that general called you Colonel today, I felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. Everything I thought I knew, it was all wrong. All of it. Not all of it I countered. You taught me about duty and service. That is why I accepted the assignment, even knowing what it would cost personally. You taught me that some things are bigger than ourselves. He shook his head. I never taught you forgiveness, though, or understanding. Yet here you are willing to speak to me after how I treated you. You are my father. Those 4 simple words seemed to reach him in a way nothing else had. His military bearing finally gave way completely, and he embraced me for the first time since I was a teenager, leaving for the academy. I am so damn proud of you, son, he whispered. Whatever you did out there, whatever officer you have become, I am proud beyond words. The next morning, I woke in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the model ships and military history books of my youth. For the first time in 10 years, I had slept without the weight of my family's perceived disappointment pressing on my chest. Downstairs, I found Dad already awake, sitting on the front porch with coffee. He had dragged out a second chair, my grandfather's old rocker, that had always been off-limits growing up. Your chair, he said, simply gesturing toward it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up. Birds chirping, sprinklers turning on, the distant sound of a lawnmower starting. I cannot stop thinking about all these years, Dad finally said. All the Thanksgivings, Christmases, your birthday dinners where we did not even speak your name. We cannot get those years back, I replied. But we have now, and tomorrow. He nodded slowly. Your mother wants to throw you a proper homecoming. Invite the whole family, the neighbors. Show everyone who you really are. That is not necessary. No, but she needs it. I think I need it too, to publicly correct the record about my son. Over the following months, I worked with my superiors to create a sanitized version of my service record that could be shared with family. While most details remained classified, I was permitted to acknowledge my rank and some general commendations. General Thompson himself attended the belated homecoming celebration my parents organized, lending official credibility to my newly public status. Jason and I developed a new relationship as brothers and as fellow servicemen. While I could never discuss specifics of my operations, we shared a deeper understanding that transcended words. The competitive tension that had defined our childhood transformed into mutual respect. I spent so many years trying to be better than the brother I thought had failed, Jason admitted during one of our late-night conversations. Now I find out that brother was someone I could only hope to become. You forged your own path, I told him. Your achievements are yours alone, not a response to mine. Still knowing what I know now, how do you do it? The secrets, the shadows, never getting public recognition. I considered his question carefully before answering. I found purpose in the work itself, in knowing that what I did mattered whether anyone knew about it or not. My father too evolved in ways I never expected. The rigid military man who had disowned me for perceived weakness became an advocate for understanding the many forms service can take. At his veterans meetings, he spoke openly about his mistake in judging without knowledge, about the dangers of narrow definitions of honor and duty. My son served in ways I never imagined. I overheard him telling his old Navy buddies at a barbecue. It taught me that real strength, real service, sometimes looks nothing like what we expect. 10 years of misunderstanding could not be erased in a few months, of course. There were still awkward moments, still conversations that revealed how little my family truly knew about my life and experiences. Mom sometimes looked at me with lingering sadness for all the years lost. Dad occasionally fell into old patterns, asking questions I could not answer, then growing frustrated at the necessary secrecy. But slowly, steadily, we rebuilt. Each conversation, each shared meal or holiday added another layer to the foundation of our new relationship, one based not on assumptions or expectations, but on acceptance of who we truly were. The greatest lesson in all of this, the one I carry with me back into my work, is that true honor lies not in recognition, but in the quiet knowledge of doing what is right, even when it costs you dearly. My father taught me about duty to country, but life taught me about the deeper duty to truth and integrity, even when that truth must remain hidden. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen in shadows, witnessed by no one. Sometimes the heaviest metals are invisible, worn on the heart rather than the chest. And sometimes the most profound service requires sacrificing not just safety or comfort, but the very thing most precious, the good opinion of those you love. If my story means anything, let it be this: judge not what you do not understand. The person you dismiss today may be fighting battles you cannot see, serving in ways beyond your knowledge. Behind every failure, every disappointment, there may be a truth waiting to be revealed, one that might change everything you thought you knew. Have you ever misjudged someone only to discover a deeper truth later? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of hidden sacrifices and unexpected redemption. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about looking beyond appearances, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story today. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones we never hear about.